Thank you. It is 4 o'clock, isn't it? Oh, 3:59. Fiona is not making the meeting today. She can't join the Zoom either because she's on vacation. So have we heard from anybody else? Do we know? I didn't get any emails either.
I have not.
Okay. All right, well, let's get started. We have a lot to cover today. So welcome, everyone. It's June, right?
Yes.
You're at the Human Relations Board meeting for the City of Battle Creek. I'm Kathy Thunder Wilson, happy to be your chair. And we'll get started with roll call.
Good afternoon. When I call your name, if you could let me know if you're attending in person, which I think I've got most of you, or virtually. And if you're attending virtually, let me know where from, please. Chris Lucier.
Here, in person.
Thank you. Derek Freeman. Absent. Amora Austin. Absent. Jeffrey Cotton.
Oh, Derek just logged in.
Okay, I'll grab him in a second. Jeffrey is absent.
Derek's here.
Derek, where are you remotely zooming in from, sir?
Battle Creek, Michigan, the wonderful city of Battle Creek.
Thank you. Thank you. Jennifer Greger. Absent. Kathy Zenda Wilson.
Here in person.
Thank you so much. Charles Asher.
Here in person.
Thank you. Donald Woodward.
Here in person.
Thank you. And Kiona Ackley will note as absent.
Correct.
Jennifer Metzger. Absent. Dina Spencer. Absent. Pastor Hooper. Are you joining us remotely today, sir?
Yes, joining
From-
remotely from Orlando.
Orlando. Well, enjoy your time down there.
Oh.
That's awesome.
Okay.
Whitney Wardell.
Whitney Wardell, present from Battle Creek, remotely
Thank you.
from Battle Creek.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mhm.
Leanne Wesley. Absent. Bonica Herring. Absent. Rebecca Fleury.
Present remotely from Battle Creek.
Thank you. And Roger Ballard.
Present. Here.
Thank you so much. One moment here. We do have quorum. We just made it. Thank you.
Yay, awesome. All right, so with that, thank you everyone for
Here,
being
here.
here. And might I get a motion for the minutes?
So moved.
Okay, oh, it's okay.
Second,
Thank you. And we've got a second, any discussion,
Can I
comments?
ask who moved, please?
Yes, it was Chuck Asher, seconded by by Derek.
By Derek. Got it. Thank you.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Okay, we have approved the minutes of May 17th. All right, do we have any communications?
We do not.
Okay. We have no committee reports. We have a draft plan of the Community Review and Oversight Board. And Rebecca, am I turning this over to you? Or is it you and Chief?
Briefly to me, and I will kick it to Chief Bagley.
Okay, sounds good.
So the committee is in receipt of the draft plan that's also been shared with the City Commission. This is reflective of the input we received from the community as well as the commission at our workshop. I'm blanking on the date right now. You asked if it was June. I was like, is it June? Yeah, it is June. Anyway, so you have the draft and we're waiting for any additional feedback from the commission at this particular time, and whether or not they feel that an additional workshop is needed or it would come forward as basically amendment to a current chapter. I think the only feedback I have received from the commission, and I want to share that just a second. Let me just switch screens. And a commissioner was asking for a sentence to be removed from the draft that you have right there. And here it is. It's the sentence that says, the board may also issue reports about police, community relations, racial profiling, and other concerns that relate to the community climate. The board will report its findings promptly to the city manager. You know, I think there is a scope issue about the body generating its own report. That was really the concern. And, you know, in talking through it with the city attorney as well as Chief Bagley, we did not feel that eliminating the sentence changes, you know, any values or structure and goal of this particular committee. And so we have agreed that that can be removed, but at least wanted to know that that you know that that was a sentence that is being suggested to be removed and would be in a draft plan that goes in front of the commission. So I will turn it over to Chief Bagley. He wasn't unfortunately available to be at the last meeting where we kind of dissected through we talked about this. We talked about the feedback received from the commission, but you know, I cannot do it as good of justice as Chief Bagley does for specific, you know, content questions in regards to how it actually will function. So we're certainly open and willing to have that discussion here with this body.
Rebecca, thank you for that. I don't see reference to that point at all. Do you know exactly where it is in the?
Sure. So if you go
Plan?
to other roles and duties of the board, not numbered, but it would be on the under roles and duties of the board.
Okay,
And if you go under reporting, it would be,
okay.
and go down probably 2/3, and it would be second to the last sentence. Okay.
We have a couple of members who have joined us. I'd just like to take them for roll.
Please,
If you,
thank you.
yes, if you could just respond. I know you're all reporting virtually. Just let me know where from, please. Jeffrey Cotton.
Hello, this is Jeffrey Cotton, responding virtually from Battle Creek.
Thank you, sir. Jennifer Metzger.
Hi, this is Jenny Metzger, remotely from Battle Creek.
Thank you. And Leanna Wesley.
Hello, this is Leanne Wesley, joining from Battle Creek.
I'm going to get that right one of these times. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you, Alicia, and welcome everyone. We are right now going over the community review and oversight board, and we're turning it over to Chief to provide us an update.
So as city manager just said, waiting to hear back from the city commission on any of their thoughts regarding any changes or anything other than what we had just referenced in that paragraph. And I know you guys had an opportunity to kind of chew on this and dissect it at the last HRB meeting. So I wanted to just take an opportunity, any questions that you might have, any discussions that we want to have on any points of topics within the document, and kind of go for there and see where the conversation leads.
Okay, I can open it up for discussion. If you are remote and you'd like to, just feel free to unmute yourself and begin speaking. It'll be my easiest way of knowing who'd like to speak.
This is Jeffrey.
Hi,
Sorry,
Jeffrey.
y'all. You guys, I missed y'all at the last meeting, so I didn't see this. So I got a couple questions actually. Is this the same process that we was going through a few months ago?
This is the result of the work we've been doing collaboratively to develop what we were referring to at the time was a citizens review board. Then there was a workshop with commissioners that resulted in the development of the document you have, the draft you have in front of you right now.
And what role, Chief? What role is the chief? What role are you playing in this, Chief?
As far as, I gave input. Some of the input contained in the document was from my office as well.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, my opinion stands the same as it was last year, year before last, and this whole process. I don't believe that the police department should be involved in the Citizens Review Board whatsoever. So that's my only opinion.
Thank you, Jeff. Yes, question.
Alshan Don Woodward. I had a question regarding membership, and it's point 6. And the sentence reads, nominations for new members shall be made by any member of the CROB. I'm wondering on reading that, it feels that that's limiting any nomination for any new member to sitting members of that board. And number one, it reads like there's a potential for cronyism. And number two, why was that included?
I think that was part of, to be more inclusive with the board. Sometimes it's very difficult. That's not one of my points of input, but I can speak unless, Rebecca, you have a little bit further information on that, but
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Chief, and I can follow up.
Okay, so what I think that was is that how sometimes it's very difficult to get people to serve on boards, so that I don't think it's inclusive to just board members. It could be maybe wordsmithed a little bit better. I think that individuals that sit on the board may have other people in which they have contact with, what they could bring to the table that wouldn't normally wouldn't get cast in the net from the city. So I think that was probably the intent, but there might be a need to do a little bit more wordsmithing. So yeah.
I
Thank
think
you.
so, and I think the feedback that we received in about that question right there is that on other boards and commissions, feedback was received that members don't have any say in potential future or replacement board members. And so this was making sure that the body knew that the CROB current standing members do have a say in that. Ultimately, the city commission has to appoint based on recommendations. So, I absolutely think if that's, how you read that, we certainly can work on verbiage that might clear that up, because I don't think it's meant to be
Exclusionary.
isolating or an exclusion of any. As a matter of fact, the city commission expanded the number of members on the committee, fearing that 5 was too little, and increase that to 9 plus 2 alternate members, or 7 with 2 alternate members, totaling 9. So if we need to, as the chief said, wordsmith that a little bit so that's clear, we certainly are open to what that looks like.
Well, I think that if we move from shall to can, right? Like, I don't think you want to limit members from nominating people, but I don't think you want to, it reads as though that's the only way people will get on the board.
Right.
When it says shall be, and I wonder if it says maybe. Made by any member of the CROB. And I wonder if you include language about, because when I found out about the HRB, it was because through the process of just coming to the city and wanting to volunteer, right? Like, so you want that door to remain open, and I don't know that that's explicit here, like that you'll be seeking volunteers from multiple, I don't know how you want to word that, but
We can
Okay.
take, yeah, that's whatever.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Clean that up.
That
Okay.
seems doable.
all right, other comments, questions? Not even just about how it's worded, but like the overall process, any feedback we want to provide the commission as they consider this?
I have another comment and question. My question is,
Yep.
why haven't Ms. Fleury and Chief, why haven't y'all turned this process over to the people? Why are y'all so over dominant in this process? Why are y'all so involved in this process? Why isn't this process turned over to the people? This is the same thing that's been going on with this city for decades. It's the same circle of people that control everything and create different boards and commissions and groups and things like this. This is not a citizens review board. And I know I missed the last meeting, and I'm not going to stop using my voice though. This is not right. Y'all should not be involved in this process. Y'all are overstepping your authority. This is the citizens review board. It should be turned over to the citizens, man. Y'all should not be involved in this process.
Yeah, I appreciate your perspective. I do believe this came from the community itself. And we've gone through a process of, with this board representing the community, having another layer of review and collaboration. And then the workshop that was a public workshop with the commission was another layer of that. So
And where's their involvement layer is what I'm saying. What about their involvement layer? What layer is that? That shouldn't even be a layer. What we going through right now, the chief sitting here talking about points of interest and things that they will adjust. That involvement layer should not exist. I mean, and y'all can go through with it. I've kind of stopped trying to fight it a few months ago because I seen y'all was gonna keep going through with it. But I'm not gonna stop trying to fight it on the ground level.
Well, yeah, and so I think that where there was consensus was that this has to be a board of the city in order for us to have access to the information that's required to make any recommendations, and that has to be in partnership with the city. So working with Rebecca and Chief was about being able to, this has to get positioned in front of the commission to be approved if it's going to be a board of the city. So this feels like this is the appropriate approach. And Rebecca and Chief, feel free to share, or anybody else.
Sure, and part of the whole process, when you start talking about whether you're talking about a citizens review board, or any type of body like this, is that it has it's not just, it's within all the operating divisions within the city. It starts with, of course, it starts within the police department, but there's also multiple different unions that this impacts within the police department. There's also the fire department, there's also DPW, there's code compliance. So while we start here at this level, the very real possibility that the system that we put into place here, the oversight that we put into place, has far-reaching ramifications throughout the city. So you have to bring in those directors of those other places so that they can make sure that these can be implemented within an organization. You also have to have buy-in within the organization itself, and that is from your unions. So anytime there's an appearance of a procedural change or a past operating practice that could be changed, a divisional or a director should have a seat at the table so that we can bring insight to the processes which this will impact.
Have a seat at the Citizens Review Board table? No, sir. You have a seat at the city table, yeah. You have a seat at the table as a city leader. And when the Citizens Review Board approaches the police department for some misconduct, or any other city official or city establishment of government for some misconduct, that's when you have a seat at the table. But having a seat at the table,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Jeff,
Like
I don't have a seat at the table, Jeff, for the purposes of the board. I don't have a board seat. This is just for the purposes of trying to develop and then orchestrate and then implement the process in which the elected officials, being the city commission, have given us the authority to do. I don't have a seat at the table.
I understand, Chief, and that's possibly even worse. That's possibly even worse. You having a seat at the table with designing the Citizen Review Board itself. That you don't understand that serves as an issue. If you, as the chief of the Battle Creek Police Department, are participating in establishing the Citizens Review Board, then when any review happens, you've already participated in creating the system that's going to review your department.
But it's an
Jeff,
yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Rebecca.
No, Jeff, I certainly do. I respect your opinion. I do think that we were open and transparent about this particular process. This was a recommendation as a consideration to the city commission, and this document is a direct result from their discussions and ask. Ultimately, it will be the commission's decision if this community review and oversight board is created. I certainly hear what you're saying, and a lot of that was discussed at the workshop. Pros and cons to what you're asking, but this is the direction in which we are headed with input from the Human Relations Board and the community. You're right; it's not going to be what everybody wanted, and certainly we had a lot of discussions with the NAACP and Carrie Whitfield, and this isn't a direct copy of what they submitted either. We did our best to be listeners, not only to our community and those that would be involved in this process, whether you're part of drafting it or whether you would be a part of the board going forward, but also our internal stakeholders. And I think the chief mentioned it, when you talk about the unions, the city is not in favor of violating any labor rights of our officers. And, that's a fine line. I certainly hear what you're saying. And we've committed to say, if the city commission creates this, it can be fluid. It's not set in stone. If we find that this is not functioning as we had anticipated, or we're getting feedback that we need to, reconsider, the commission at least has shared that they are open to that if this is created. But it was the outcome of that workshop that it become a board of the city.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Jeff. I think what Jeff is really getting down to, and it's kind of scary with a lot of boards and within the city of Battle Creek, that it is the same circle. It is the same people that's, voicing their opinion. And I know that the community did have a chance to talk about this, but who was the community members? I guess what Jeff is getting at, because it'd be the same people. And even if I came, it'd be the same people. We definitely, not just this board, but all other boards, we got to do better at reaching the people. I don't know. I think that's it. Like, we just got to do better at reaching the people. I do believe that this is the board that we do need within the city, of course. My second question will be, when this board is established, are they able to change policies themselves? How would that go about, Rebecca? If you can answer that.
Derek, can you just make sure I understand as far as change policies, a policy of the
Or
city
procedures
or a policy of
of-
the police department?
Go ahead. Sorry. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Oh. No, I'm sorry. I was just clarifying your question about, can this board change policies? Are you talking about policies and procedures of the city as a whole?
Or no,
of
just the
Battle Creek
board,
Police
or
Department?
how they active in the community, the board itself, not.
So when-
Okay,
Derek,
I'm
if I
sorry. I
can,
think I'm
Rebecca-
still not.
Yeah, this might help. I don't know. So when you look, Derek, under the purpose, and the third bullet says serve in an advisory role to the city manager or designee regarding possible policy and procedure improvements regarding the complaint process, or which are implicated in the complaint process to the BCPD regarding methods to improve communication and citizen outreach. So reading this, I did not make the assumption that they are empowered or emboldened to make policy changes, but to serve as advisors for recommendations to the city staff when things are discovered. So I don't know if there are limitations on that you could speak to, Rebecca, about how far reaching could that be? But yeah, just I'll leave it there and ask you that question. If there's a response to it.
Sure, so a lot of policy and procedure is also closely related to union issues, right? Practice, established procedures, that type of thing. Without a doubt, this board could weigh in on suggested policy changes depending upon the situation, and if there's and it wouldn't just wait for a situation. If there's an issue in which let's review fill in the blank, well, of course we would seek their input on weighing in on what advice they would give to us, a specific policy. But as far as carte blanche to change your policy in and of itself, no, that would be problematic, just because that's a lot of dominoes to fall as you start going down that road. So
Thank you.
And that's
Thank you, Chief. And thank you, Rebecca. I guess it's just so far off from what we started from. I guess like an advisory board. Basically, this is going to be a board where we just advising, not me, but whoever's on the board, the 7 and 9 members who's on the board, they would just be advising, hey, this, and then it goes into the city commissioner, the city commission then determine if what they advise is correct, or do they advise everything that the advisory board will recommend?
Well, and I think that's really hard to say, because each policy, whether it's city or the police department, is different. And it's, the level of which it's implemented is different as well. I mean, if we talk about something like use of force versus training requirements for new recruits, those are two very different things. So what comes into play there is certainly the police department's policies and procedures as they have been accredited. Then, of course, there's the city, any conflicting policies and procedures with the overall city. Those are all things that have to be analyzed based on the policy or procedure we're asking to be changed. But that shouldn't necessarily be that it would never get changed, because it's advisory. A recommendation from the CROB or the HRB is, I believe, it's greatly considered by the commissioners when it comes forward to them. And I won't speak for Commissioner Ballard. But let me also say, and I forgot to share this when I was speaking with Jeff, and then to you, Derek, too, is really, we started with the purpose is to have more accountability and transparency in the police department. And we don't, it was perceived by the input we received in the committee that we don't have that. And so these are steps towards that. And you're right, there are just certain items in even the NAACP proposal that would have been very difficult for the chief or I to recommend, and ultimately was or was not a part of this document based on the direction of the commission.
Thank you, Rebecca. Jeff, I see your hand, but I want to make sure that we get Dina in role. Alicia, Dina is here now.
Dina, are you remoting in or in person?
No, I'm in person. Thank you. I'm sorry
Thank-
for my tardiness.
That's okay. Thank you.
Yep, and Jeff,
Yeah, I just want to know when this be put in front of the Citizens Review Board so we can fight it. And hopefully they can reject it. And this could be a huge waste of time for you guys involving yourselves in this process.
well, it's not the
would this
intent to
be
do
placed
that.
before the city? No, I'm saying that's my intent. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
I want to stop this process so the police department and the city of Battle Creek would have been wasting their time trying to establish an organization to review themselves. When will this be in front of the city commission?
We do not have a date yet.
Okay.
But we'll be apprised of when it'll be in front of the city commission, right?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so I mean,
Oh,
all of
yes.
us have an opportunity if we wanna
I-
be at that proceeding.
Yeah, I think it'll be important. And I think I want to go back to one of Derek's comments about like expanding who sits at tables on boards, on advisory groups for the city. And I think that is one of the charges of this group is how are we looking at how we're reaching out into the community and bringing people in to be engaged. I think that is not something that I have felt any resistance from any of the city staff. I think they're in alignment with that desire. I think the challenge is always the how. You know, we try to make it as available and accessible as possible, but as we all know, how the world operates is that there's a lot of networking that goes on. People learn about these things because of who they know. We just have to expand that scope of who it is. And I think that we need to be more thoughtful about that and creating some strategies to make that happen. So instead of just pointing the fingers and saying this is wrong with what's going on, we have to be a part of what the solutions are going to be to actually change that dynamic when and where we can.
But if you don't mind me interrupting, Kathy, we tried. We've been having arguments on this issue for over a year now, and nothing stopped. Nobody stopped. No member, Chief Blocker didn't do it, and Chief Blakely is not doing it, stepping away from this process, saying, and just in a good faith argument, saying, you know what, you're right. We shouldn't be involved in this process at this time. We should be involved in this process after there's a Citizens Review Board already put together, and then we can sit at the table and make all of these arrangements and negotiations and oversight, all these things that y'all talking about. But right now, designing a Citizens Review Board, and especially starting one for the city of Battle Creek, y'all should not be involved in this process. I could go back right now and take a screen recording of the first time we talked about it, and I said the same thing to Chief Blocker. Nobody is diverting. Nobody's changing. Nobody restarted the process and said, let's involve the community. Let's try our best to reach out to the citizens of Battle Creek that this will directly affect. They are not involved. They are not sitting at this table. And including myself, I'm not on the streets. I'm not engaging with the police anymore like I used to when I was young. I'm not having bad rapport with the police. They know better than to say something racist to me now. But for the voiceless people in my community, that's not the case. They should not be involved in this process. And I want to fight it so bad. But I got tired of using my voice against this issue. I got sick of arguing every meeting we had once a month. It was a CRB argument. I got tired of it. So I know how they feel. We're coming to meetings and the same old thing happening over and over and over again. I'm literally witnessing it happening right now.
Yeah, I appreciate your and respect your perspective, Jeff, a lot. And I do think that there was some intentionality around a collaborative approach to development of this board so that we could get access to the things that we need for it to be effective. And I don't feel as though what we're looking at right now is something that Chief developed himself. That's not what we're looking at. We did a survey that the intention was to reach out into the community and find out what their thoughts and beliefs and desires were for a board. We analyzed that information and tried to include that in what recommendations we made. We needed some logistical support on putting together a document, which the city provided. But I don't disagree that there is an completely invisible and silenced voice that needs to be lifted up. Whether or not this is that mechanism, I mean, that organizing still has to go on, right? I think that this is a first step in us seeing how do we utilize what we have at our disposal and the infrastructure of the city to create better relationships with the community and create more transparency with the police department.
Can I ask Chief a question? Chief, have you ever created a citizens review board before?
No,
Then why would we go to you as a specialist or for any reference with this process?
well, I worked very closely. I was a liaison between the Citizens Review Board and the department where I last worked. So I have a pretty intimate working relation or working knowledge of a Citizens Review Board, just based upon my experience.
And what that Kalamazoo?
Yeah, yes, sir.
I digress.
Chris?
You know, Jeff, I actually think this process has been pretty robust. I think we have covered all of the different versions of a citizen review board that could exist. At one point in time, we took a look at them. I certainly empathize with you in that there are things missing from where we landed.
No disrespect, Chris. I wouldn't have the same. Nothing you could say could change the fact that the chief police is sitting at the table. It's chief police at the table. The process might be beautiful. It might be effective. It might be a good qualified structure of a citizens review board, but the police are at the table. That's the only complaint I have.
Yeah, I'm not trying to change your mind, Jeff, at all. What I would say is that through that process whereby we examined a lot of different things, there are ways in which I failed to build consensus around the points that I thought were most important and that should have been addressed. I raised the point that accountability, which is a word that was used repeatedly amongst citizens who we surveyed, that word was used, or mechanisms for creating accountability were used. It wasn't just transparency. It wasn't just about building relationships with the PD. What was stressed way more often was accountability, the need for accountability. The word accountability is used one time in the document that we have, and it's not even used in a conference that I would recognize as being speaking to those concerns that people have. So I failed to build consensus around that through this process, and I'm going to own that. I did speak up about it. I spoke up about it about 5 or 6 times, and but I didn't build consensus on this board. I didn't have in front of me proposals for a grassroots effort that would create accountability with the police department that didn't include the police department. At no time did we ever sit down and come to a point where someone had reached consensus that that's a model that we should seriously consider, where I could weigh in and say I was going to support that. It doesn't mean that that couldn't exist, but that wasn't, I agree with you. That wasn't seriously considered as an option. Did you say that should have been an option? Yes, but I would argue you didn't garner enough support on this board. And is this the right board for that? Maybe not. So if you want to bring a bunch of folks to the city commission meeting who will speak to how something different needs to happen, that seems very appropriate to me. But to say that this process didn't create avenues for us to consider all the different options, I don't think is fair to what actually happened.
I didn't even say that. You just made that up.
Well,
I didn't even say that.
Maybe I did. So part of what, I'm not just responding to you, part of me is just wanting to say, I feel like we did have a robust process that considered a lot of different options. We considered whether it should have subpoena power or not. Did we land where I thought we should land, or, no, but we did actually, there was a place where we did stop and look at boards that had subpoena power. We looked at, I would say, we didn't look seriously at what are examples where communities have these grassroots efforts to create accountability with the PD and consider that. And I think you did raise that issue. In my mind, this is my perception, was that you did raise that issue from the very beginning. I kind of felt like it didn't come up here because this was going to be a partnership with city government, and the way that was taking place, city government was looking to create a board that would be advisory. And it was something that needed to pass through this current city commission. So I don't think that was something that was serious, like that we really dug into deeply. So I agree, and if that's not what you're talking about, that's fine. I'm just throwing that out there.
No, I just want to stay for the record. Like, this is not just a review. Citizens Review Board is just not a group against the police. It's not that y'all keep it seems, but the police being so overbearing, then it turns into that, or it seems like that. Citizens Review Board is a review board that stands up for the citizens' interactions with government officials. It's not only the police, but the police and almost every insistence that the Citizens Review Board is developed are so overbearing. That's what it becomes, another puppet regime controlled by the police departments in cities all across the USA. My only complaint is not necessarily with the process or the conversations that we had or the direction that this draft has taken, which is not necessarily a negative direction. My only complaint is that as an honorable human being, a police officer or a city official should have heard these arguments, listened to these arguments, and stepped away from this development table. That's my only complaint. It's a fruit of the poisonous tree. If you are involved in the process of developing something that's designed to challenge you, that's a conflict of interest.
Thank you, Jeff. So I think we've been able to get on the record our feedback, our thoughts. If Rebecca, is the door still open for us to provide feedback in writing to you?
Of course.
Okay, and then you would keep us abreast of the timeline that this will go to the commission. I
Yes.
encourage all of us as we're out in the community that we maintain our listening ears, find out where there is energy to do. This doesn't have to be it, right? I think this is a thing we're doing. It's not going to be the only thing that this community needs to do. And I really appreciate you lifting up the lack of us looking at accountability in this, because that didn't bubble up for me until you said it, Chris. And I agree. We talked a lot about that.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I mean, there's processes in place for accountability. This is another layer. There's processes with the federal government, vis-a-vis consent decrees, the Attorney General of this state, the Attorney General of this country. I am all for accountability and transparency.
Mhm.
How many layers are we looking to apply? Because the more layers you apply, the more bureaucracy that you have. So we have to be effective in its application.
As many layers as we need. What you mean, bro? Why would you even say that?
You're not listening to me, Jeff. So what I'm simply saying is, I'm all for it. But you have to articulate it, and you have to be specific in its articulation. Otherwise, and understand this, there's also systems in place internally and mechanisms for discipline and investigation. And then when you start to look at those systems, another layer, again, I go back to, it has to be palatable within the operational procedures that you have within the system itself. You have multiple unions, you have past practice, you have 312 for mandatory bargaining with the union. These are actual considerations that you have to have. Have to have it.
Yeah, so you asked the question, since I brought it up, I would just say I wouldn't know how to be prescriptive about what it looks like to be accountable to the community. I would have heard police officers who showed up in the community trying to be accountable to the folks that they were serving, and been able to look at the way that they modeled that behavior and said, that's a cop that's, first of all, got a lot of credibility with the community and someone I respect a lot, and I love how they're showing up in our community. I also can talk to folks in the community who want to see it. And when they talk about what it means for them to have a cop be accountable to them, they are able to articulate those things well. One specific example, in 2006, we were doing a stealth rally, and residents wanted the police department to come into the Post neighborhood and make a commitment to help improve safety in their neighborhood and improve relationships there, because they didn't feel like they were very responsive. And there were shootings at that time, some youth violence that was taking up a lot of the headlines, and the police were busy. The commander at the time blew 4 meetings off in a row as we were getting ready to plan this rally and stuff like that. And he finally eventually was gonna have the meeting. We're gonna have the night before the meeting with the police chief, where we're gonna work out the negotiation of what kind of commitment they'd make in front of 200 people on this street. We were making signs and they're all grumbling about the PD. And I said, I get the feeling that even if they show up tomorrow and make this commitment, you all are gonna feel like they disrespected you, or you're not even gonna be pleased. So what's it gonna take for us to feel good about what's happening? So we worked something out and we sat down with the police commander at the time. And they said, before they started the meeting, says, we know that by partnering with the police, we're gonna get some results in our neighborhood, and then we're gonna improve relationships. We know what we're gonna get out of this, but we're not so certain that you know what you're gonna get out of working with us. And I think before we start this meeting and we work out what we're gonna do and how we're gonna do this, I think we'd like to hear from you in your words, what you think you're gonna get out of partnering with the community and why this is important for you. And I think it means a lot to us because we know you're busy, but you've blown off 4 meetings with us and you didn't think it was important enough to show up to this. And that commander was looking, I intentionally sat behind him and looked at the floor because I know he was looking at me as the community organizer and thinking like, and then my boss got a phone call and he was pissed. But he stood up on that street corner that Friday night when we did a rally. We ended up having 300 people show up. We had all the politicians in town. We had the news. It was the lead story at 11 o'clock that night. And they asked him a yes or no question with the mic. And he said, yes or no, will you commit to helping, build relationships on this block and turn things around? And when he said, yes, we can, he became the hero. Yes, we will. He became the hero for everybody there. And they all felt like this is the guy that's going to help deliver on the promise. And I didn't have a bad relationship with him after that because it was a situation where we had that. And suddenly we had that kind of accountability with folks. I don't know what it means for everybody, but clearly there are a lot of folks in this community that don't feel like, and in this country, that don't feel like police departments value that. And I also, to me, it's noticeable that that word is often missing. And this is, I've had really great relationships with the police department and worked hand in hand. A lot of guys have retired, honestly. So I don't know everyone today, but for 20 years, I'm a big fan of the police department. I'm not in the same position as others, but I would just say that it is often missing from discussions. It is often not like we avoid saying that we talk about relationships, talk about some of the other things, but not about how I'm here to be accountable to the folks in this community.
Well, I can say in my discussions, so I made my way around the community and then my feelings on this, you can't have a relationship without accountability. They're synonymous. So, and I, by no means were my previous comments meant as a deterrent to the use of accountability. It is about, we have to be practical in this approach. Okay, I mean, this is, I'm just saying there are other things to consider here that have ramifications that I think that through the commission putting this together and giving us a bit of a direction to follow is something to be considered. Like I said, accountability and relationship, they go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. Well, you can try, but then look where certain communities are, right? So you have to be able to have uncomfortable conversations. And sometimes that's about asking for forgiveness because we were wrong. No problem doing that, right? But we really have to be pragmatic in our approach and the direction in which I think that the commission, this is a draft document, right? So yeah, we can still kick around suggestions and ideas, but this is the direction in which the commission kind of gave us to move. And while I understand that there might be, that this didn't hit the mark for some people, I get it. I completely understand that. But it's a starting point. It's a starting point. And there's
it's not that it didn't hit the mark for some people, Chief, it's that you shouldn't be involved. I repeat, you as the chief of the Battle Creek Police Department should not be involved in the beginning stages of this process. And for the record, bro, you as a police officer should never again in your career make an argument against accountability. You should never make an argument against another layer of accountability. You should, the relationship between the police department and the people of America is in danger. It's horrible right now.
Jeff, just so you understand, and for the record, my argument was, and by no means against accountability. That is not at all what I was speaking to.
So I think we have other things to get to on the agenda. I think this conversation could continue for a long time. I appreciate everybody bringing the amount of passion they have to this. I do think that in closing, I think the idea of us taking some more time to look through this document and provide some feedback around what's missing in it that we think needs to be there to strengthen it is going to be important. I think your perspective on this, Jeff, is well noted and documented in the notes. And I do think that from an accountability standpoint, I think what's been missing structurally is that the accountability feels like it goes up and it rarely goes in to community. And I think that's the intent of trying to change this. So to the extent we can include that, I appreciate what you're saying is that it's got to be feasible. It's got to be doable, right? We may not know what that looks like, but we can figure out what the language is that we want to include here so that we're at least pushing ourselves that way. This is a start, and I look forward to what's next. This has been a really, really long journey.
Can I make just one comment?
Yes, Chuck.
To what Shannon said, Chief said about being practical, we have to start from someplace. And we have a document, and it's a draft document, and I think we all agree there needs to be some changes to it. But I think it's really important, if it's going to be a living document, which I understand it is going to be a living document, who we appoint to this board eventually. That is plugged into the community, can make those changes, and eventually make this work for everybody. So
Thank you. All right, for new business, we might have to adjust our agenda slightly because it's 4:45. But Kim, I'm going to turn it over to you for your DEI draft action plan that you sent us, and I'll turn it over to you to take it from here.
Yeah, how would you, because I was already planning to condense a 30-minute talk into like 15 minutes. So how would you like me to go through the next 5 minutes? 'Cause I can do hit some highlights or.
So Alicia, can we do public comment right now and then go to Kim so that we're not worried about losing that at 5 o'clock?
Well, your meeting has to be open to the public and available for the public to join in the meeting the entire time, the whole discussion.
It would, yeah, it would stay open. I'm concerned that if she goes up till 4:59, it's like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if we could move anything around.
You can ask for public comment now, that's fine.
Okay, is there any public comment? I don't think we have anybody else online and there's nobody in the room.
There's not a waiting room. so-
Okay, yeah, all right. Thank you, Alicia. And then
You're
Kim,
welcome.
let's just go from here. And then the rest, we are going to just parking lot until the next, we'll put that on the next agenda.
All right, so what I am going to go through with you fairly quickly, feel free to interrupt me if I'm moving along too fast, is a DEI roadmap that I will be presenting to the city commission in July. We wanted to get it in front of this board first for your just feedback and conversation. And certainly hopefully there will be avenue following this, given the time, for you to still give me feedback, as we continue to tweak this. But what you're getting is really a bare bone draft, of what will be, an hour-long workshop with the city commission next month. So I'm just gonna go through the elements of the roadmap pretty quickly. All right, so the background you're all pretty familiar with in terms of the equity audit, so I'm not gonna spend time there. Unless I circle back and someone has specific questions in that regard. I did want to note though, that what you may not know, because I don't think it's on the website, is that coming out of the equity audit, there were 2 action plans developed. One in regard to human resources systems and one in regard to police community relations. And those action plans are 1-pagers that identify strategic priorities. I did dig deeper into that with the consultant that conducted the audit, and these action plans were created by a committee of 8 people. And so as I go through this, I do intend to compare what was developed with the equity audit to what we learn as I'm gathering information from staff. But I personally feel it's very important for all staff to have a voice and contribute to the priorities of what this process will look like. So while I'm taking that into consideration, that particular piece is not the guiding force of this effort. Some critical elements in terms of DEI work. Number one, first and foremost, is commitment. And this is commitment from the city commission. This is commitment from the city manager's office. This is commitment from the DEI office in terms of operating at a level of excellence and integrity. Commitment from senior leadership, because senior leadership will be responsible for modeling this work and helping to shepherd this effort throughout the city departments. And commitment from staff to actively engage in the process. Resources. I think that's pretty clear. I don't think I need to go into much of the detail about that. Financial resources, human resources, data and metrics. I think it's really important that we develop data-driven strategies with this work. And right now, we don't have a robust data system in place in terms of DEI related efforts. And so that will be a critical element. Communication. We've had a great conversation about accountability and systems. The approach is around fixing and changing systems, not individuals. And I want to stress that as I'm speaking with the city commission. So the approach will be in phases. Phase one is what we're actively engaged in, and that's laying the foundation. Phase two will be actual execution of an action plan and normalizing equity so that we all have across the city a shared understanding of what this means and how this impacts the functions in our various roles. And then phase three is how we actually operationalize equity within our systems. Some important principles guiding this approach. As I already mentioned, all city employees should have an opportunity to contribute to this process. Welcoming diversity of thought and experiences, cultivating collaboration, clarity and transparency to build trust, grace to learn and grow. This one I've personally struggled with. I had conversations with Chris about this, and Rebecca, is balancing vision and a sense of urgency with practical implementation. There is a sense of urgency around this work. However, it can't be rushed because we could end up doing more harm. And so it's an interesting balance there. Because this isn't like a 2-year project. This is forever from this point forward. And then also attending to impact. It's one thing to have an intent, but what is the impact? Which again goes back to ensuring that we aren't creating harm. I'm creating some graphics around this work, so there's some gaps in here in terms of images that will be a part of the final presentation. So phase one, laying the foundation. So what's happening right now is a lot of conversations to develop a collective vision around DEI for the city of Battle Creek. What those definitions mean for us, because we'll have to actualize those definitions. What the city's values are, but not just the values, but what behaviors are associated with those values. So that we can develop a theory of change. If this is our vision, what has to change in order for us to live into that vision? And then creating a DEI statement that is not just internal, but a public statement that the community will be able to hold us accountable to, and that I am recommending down the line in terms of a resolution to ensure that this work remains a commitment of the city of Battle Creek beyond any leadership transition, et cetera. Understanding data and metrics, I've already touched on that. Initial training to build shared understanding and knowledge. And assessments, we're doing assessments around language access, our current LEP plan, and accessibility. All of those pieces are are necessary in order to, as I mentioned, develop the priorities for this work for us, and what action steps are gonna be behind those priorities. So I've been having conversations with senior leadership team, and now I am about to go back to all of the different city departments and have opportunities to have conversation with employees at all different levels of the organization around these very things, so that their perspectives and experiences will inform what this action plan will look like going forward. That's phase one. Phase two, and again, this is launching this work. It doesn't mean we're gonna complete all of this and it's gonna stop at the end of 2024. So as I mentioned, using the information gathered to establish our strategies and objectives and setting key performance indicators. In terms of training and education, as I've learned more about city functions in the different departments, I recognize that the training, while the content may be the same, the way it's delivered and how it's applied in terms of that system or that practice needs to be custom to the functions of that particular department. So remaining flexible in terms of how the training is delivered, and education around how it is applied to that particular policy or structure or practice within that department. Culture is going to be key, services and community, and then building a DEI office structure and team. There is no way that one person can do all of this work in terms of helping to shepherd this process. And so also, I think it's important to establish for the community and employees what the DEI office is and what it isn't. Because I've started to get a variety of calls and visits. And so I think it's important to distinguish it is not HR. I am not the DEI police. But want to make that clear and establish that for not just internally, but for the community as well, to understand how this office can be a resource for both internal and external going forward. Phase two, just breaking it out a little bit more detail in terms of training and education. Just a couple of things that I want to touch on here is building core competencies with staff around diversity, equity, and inclusion principles. Training Institute, I put that in quotes because this is a recommendation I made with HR that we're going to work in concert together in terms of building mandatory and optional trainings. So trainings that should be a part of onboarding processes for employees, and training within your first year, within your second year. If you're a manager, you have to have this type of training, et cetera. Incorporating that into a training kind of institute so that it also includes things like customer service, or so DEI is not on an island, but is embedded within our HR system. We'll run out of time, so I want to scoot to some other areas. In terms of our culture, some initial data from the equity audit gives me concern about psychological safety here at the city in terms of people feeling okay to take risks or challenge the status quo. So we really want to take a look at how we're building a culture where people do feel psychologically safe. That will include learning and reflection. Also inclusion. I was not happy with some data scores around inclusion and people feeling like they could bring their full selves to their job without fear. So we'll be gauging those numbers as well. Services and community. We're not going to get to language access today, but future agenda, accessibility plan. Have started a great kind of partnership with the Disability Network of Southwest Michigan. And I think there's a lot that we'll be able to do there, again, in phases. And engagement and partnerships. Derek, you spoke to community engagement. I was in a meeting with Rebecca and Ted, a community partner organization earlier this week and we talked about partnership in terms of being able to do just what you said in terms of helping people have access to these opportunities, to be able to give feedback in terms of city services and planning, et cetera. So that is a part of the priority of the work in DEI as well, that we can do in concert with the HRB. Phase 3, operationalizing equity. So each department should begin to develop their own DEI goals, embedding those competencies into our performance reviews, expanding the DEI office functions. A lot of the first phases, the first 2 phases are internally focused. But this phase really starts to ramp up in terms of external focus. So stakeholder and resident engagement, community partnerships, again, accountability and evaluation, and annual reporting to employees and to the community. Some activities that are already underway because, you know, planning is great, but there are things happening now. So there are a couple of HR policies that are in the works, hopefully to be approved and signed off and implemented fairly soon. The DEI office is supporting fire department recruitment strategies because they are looking to develop a more diverse pool of applicants. Assessments, I mentioned language access and accessibility. Those are ongoing. Training resources assessment. So I am vetting different resources now and looking to pilot some of this training with departments that are already positioned or that are in need of some more immediate training that a longer term process would not help. And also in terms of DEI practitioner collaboration, I've been meeting with other DEI offices in cities across Michigan, sharing resources, discussing strategy, and also was invited to speak to an HR group that the Battle Creek Unlimited pulls together every month, and recommended that instead of a one-off kind of conversation, that we develop a regular cadence to share resources and help hold each other accountable to the goals that we have in regard to DEI. And also, I have colleagues at the health department, at Michigan Works and other organizations, and we share resources in regard to DEI training and strategies as well. So then it just loops back to remind the city commission about our critical elements of images, graphic images, and then open up for Q&A. I feel so bad that this was rushed.
No, I'm sorry.
No, this is an important conversation that
Yes.
happened. I just feel like I kind of skipped over a lot that would, you know, love this group's feedback.
You say this is going to be a workshop or a presentation?
It will be a workshop on July 11th from 5:30 to 6:30.
Would it be helpful if we're there
It
for
would be
you?
fantastic.
Okay.
if
What
you
time
have
again was it? I'm sorry.
5:30 to 6:30 on July 11th. That'll be right before that city commission.
Okay.
Did you see Kalamazoo established an office last night?
I did, I met with them the day that they were first presenting that to the
Yeah,
commission.
they voted and established it, I think, last night.
Mhm.
Good. So consider yourselves invited to May 11th. If you have any feedback on this, can we get it to you by email?
Absolutely. My email's on the Q&A.
All right.
Or you can call me or come visit.
I'm sorry?
You said May, it's July 11th.
July 11th,
Just
sorry.
for official record, I want.
'Cause May 11th, I could have been there. July 11th, I can't. I'll be in California. But thank you for all of this work. I know, and we will continue the language access discussion. So be thinking about ways that you can contribute to that conversation in July. I was actually going to suggest that we take July off because I know that we try and have a lighter summer, but I think there's just too much for us to focus on right now for us to do that. Plus, the meeting is on July 21st, I believe, and it will be after the workshop. So having you back and be able to talk about and debrief that experience will be helpful as well. So any board comments before we close? Yes,
One,
Chris.
so today will be my last meeting on the Human Relations Board. So I was planning to renew, but I ended up taking a job with the state of Michigan. And so I'll be leaving the city here in the
Who you working
next
for?
month, Michigan. So,
Figured.
yeah, so,
I know, that is a
Oh,
really.
yeah, that's sad. That's definitely sad news, Chris. Hate to see it.
Very
Having
bittersweet.
worked with Mishta, they need Chris.
Yeah, yeah.
No pressure, Chris.
yeah.
No
No, just,
Said,
just,
will you?
just be Chris.
After that,
Having worked with Chris.
like
and-
focusing on impact.
Uh-huh.
So we'll see.
Well, congratulations. You've definitely been a really valued member of this board and we're gonna miss you a lot.
Yeah, but I'm gonna miss doing it, certainly.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready to leave.
You staying in Battle Creek?
I will be living in Battle Creek for the foreseeable future and plan to be part of the community. So maybe after I get settled,
Then you can apply again as.
I can see.
Saying.
That's right. No. I mean, there are things that I would definitely like to continue to be a part of, and this is, that's something that I've enjoyed a lot. So we'll see.
All right, thank you. Any other board comments before we conclude? Yes.
I just want to clarify that the Community Review and Oversight Board Bylaws draft document is a public document and we can distribute it to our networks of interested people.
Let me check that. Rebecca?
Yes, it is a public document.
Thank you.
It is draft. So, I mean, again, it's draft and it's reflected that, so that's fine.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for all your hard work and commitment. We'll see you in July. Thank you.